Jim, her mic doesn't have a green light. Want to share? Hers doesn't have a.
Oh, it's not on.
No, it
I'll
won't.
keep this one.
No, it didn't turn on.
I turned it on.
But you can share for now.
We can share. I'm a sharer.
There's that. Oh, did you already, am I the last one? Oh, I am actually.
I don't want to share with you anyways.
Yeah, I'm working on this one, thanks. I've got this.
Just kind of clean up a bit.
You get to be Donna and Leah. And we get to share mics. It's going to be a good night.
All right, I call this meeting of the Monomoy Regional School Committee to order at 6:39. And the first item of business is the approval of the meeting minutes. Are there any corrections?
I move to approve the minutes from April 25th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Bless you.
Public comment, is there anyone from the public that would like to say anything? Come up to the podium and would you state your name again?
Eileen Dillon McGee,
Okay.
and 5 minutes of your time.
Yep.
I have a proposal to make about making the decisions about the foreign language cuts being made at Monomoy. I have a son at Harwich Elementary. He's in the 1st grade, and this means that he won't have foreign language for 2nd, 3rd, or 4th grade. And I think that as a whole, any cuts to foreign language at Monomoy are misguided. I think we need to reconsider this because there's such a need in our community and within our students for foreign language learning. We have the cognitive benefits of foreign language learning, the spillover effects that will help with learning science, other disciplines. We have, looking around at the culture and native languages, it's more than ever. Leaving here in 1990, the difference now on Cape is amazing. How many different cultures we're supporting, and how little English is being offered, structured English to help people learn the English language. We need that to be happening at the same time as allowing our students to have the cognitive benefit of learning foreign language. We also have the availability of the biliteracy seal in the state of Massachusetts. Governor Baker has a track for students starting in pre-K. So this is why I'm so opposed to cutting it at the elementary level. This track is pre-K, so students can get the kind of credit that they deserve if they're able to pass the placement test. What we need to do is facilitate giving them the tests that will allow them to get this biliteracy seal, which would help them tremendously later on, employability, all sorts of things. In addition to facilitating communication in general on Cape Cod, which is crucial right now, I think, with the current changes in demographics in our students. These are 3 main areas that I think most of us can understand pretty realistically. We have also, I come from 17 years of foreign language teaching experience, and with a master's in Spanish and language acquisition, knowing the benefits of foreign language learning on the brain, it's just tremendous. And given the circumstances, we have a really special opportunity right now on Cape Cod. And also, I think we'd be serving our students much better by embracing foreign language learning instead of trying to structure and have it in pieces. Really make it a valuable part of our students' education.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have, if I could give a copy of just a summary
Sure.
to the members.
Okay. there anyone else for public comment? All right, at this time, comments are closed, and we go to recognitions.
I have a few here. First, I'd like to thank the Friends of Chatham Waterways for their grant of $200 to the high school so that Mrs. Fort Doyle's Junior American Literature class could be supported. Thanks to the Cape and Islands Workforce Development Board for their grant of $500 towards the high school robotics team. And we'd like to thank Meyer B&B Group, Inc., Captain's House Inn in Chatham for their generous donation of $100 to be used for the Chatham Elementary Playground Fund. And we'd like to thank the Art of Charity for their grant in the amount of $1,000, which supports the Geography Man, Neil Nichols' interactive presentation of the world to sixth graders at the middle school on June 7th. And then on a more somber note, I would just like to acknowledge and recognize the passing of Ed Jaworski, who was one of the school committee members here, a former teacher for Harwich. He was both a shop teacher and a guidance counselor, a coach, and it was sort of sweet going to the funeral today. I turned to the gentleman that was sitting next to me, and I was asking him, sort of, how did you know Ed? And he's like, well, I'm here because my daughter had him, and she loved him, and he taught her how to use a bandsaw, and then proceeded to tell me about the things that Ed did for just to sort of connect kids and their parents. And he was talking about that Ed was involved in some sort of organization that where it encouraged fathers and sons to do things together and sort of report back, sort of what you did with your kid, and he was kind of talking about these different things that he had done with his own son over the time, and clearly from the accounting of Ed's children, that he's somebody that would be missed. I got a sweet email from Ed's daughter, just thanking me and some of the school committee members for being there and remembering. So it's a great loss to the town and to our school community.
I would just like to say along that line that the most important things are the way he touched the kids that he worked with. And it was so much so that when a number of us, there were 6 of us that ran for the school committee from Harwich the first year, and all of us advertised and did our signs and everything. Ed did nothing, and he was either the first or second vote getter. So that he touched not only the kids but the families and the town well.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to take a few things out of order on the reports and discussions. Because this a high school program tonight, we would ask the Iceland, China, and Spanish exchange travel trips at this time.
Good evening, members of the school committee. Thank you so much for taking us out of order. I'm Rachel Barnes from the Monomoy Regional High School. I had students who were planning to be here, and of course they're already over at the senior arts night, and I'll be joining them in a minute. So I wanted to show you some breathtaking photos of what we accomplished. And this is through your generosity, your ability to see that our kids needed to see beyond their own borders. And I wanted to thank you for that. That's part of the reason we wanted to share a little bit about what we actually did with kids on our trips for the past year from the high school. So our theme for Iceland was roll with it, because we got to the airport and our flight was canceled the minute we got off the bus. So the kids were really gracious, and what I loved about it is we talked about the difference between travelers and being tourists, and they learned how to be really good seasoned travelers. They were phenomenal. They learned how to kind of just roll with it and be decent travelers, and we got where we were going. And so our first actual full day, we spent the entire day touring national parks. We saw geysers in action. We spent our final part of the day at an Icelandic horse farm, which also doubled as a greenhouse where they grow tomatoes and peppers. Most of the things that they grow has to be done through hydroponics because the soil is completely untenable for planting in Iceland. The big joke over there is if you get lost in a forest, you can find your way out by standing up. So nothing grows in the ground. So they're trying to find different ways to make a sustainable living over there. And so we talked a lot about sustainability for the duration of our trip. Our second day was spent with waterfalls, glaciers, and axes. Oh my. The picture on the left, I think, is a real interesting one. We had students hike a glacier, and what was really important about that as we went through is we could see where the glacier had been 10 years before, and those were the mountaintops that were behind us. And we were watching the glacier sort of melting really quickly, and this is all due to climate change. So we had a really good discussion on our impact on the environment and sustainability. The picture on the far left is our kids who made an axe bridge so that they could push up and get a drink off the glacier, which was fantastic. So all of our kids got to push up and do that. It was a lot of fun. On day 3, we moved out from the countryside and back into Reykjavik for the first time. We saw the lava center where they understood the whole power of how geothermal energy works sort of on a very heavy level. And then we went to the On plant where they showed us how they problem solved what some people would perceive as a problem, meaning all of these volcanoes, active volcanoes, and turned it into a benefit, and talked about the challenges of the rest of the world to figure out what is our liability that we can turn into an asset to become more sustainable. On day 4, we went and saw more geothermal fields, which looked like we were on the moon. There was so much moon-style rock. It was incredible that we managed to go through. And of course, we had to visit the Blue Lagoon. And then on our final day, we went to the Palan Center, which really kind of tied together everything that the students had been learning about sustainability, geothermal energy, and how do we problem solve and build something greater out of the world that we live in today. Kids actually got to explore an ice cave as a part of this, and you'll probably notice, for those of you who have been around and remember the old pictures that Chatham used to do, where we would stick twins on one end and they would magically reappear on the other, we managed to recreate that in Iceland for you too, so it's a little throwback to anybody who used to see those really old Chatham High photos from the 80s and 90s. We decided to recreate one there. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them, but we want to thank you so much for the opportunity to get to do this.
No, it looked like a wonderful trip. I followed your posts on Twitter, and thank you for chaperoning.
Oh, gosh, it was my pleasure.
Yeah.
Do it again in a heartbeat. All right. With that, I'm going to turn it over to John Dixon, who's going to tell you a little bit more about a different kind of program we did, which was the Global Studies Service trip to Tanzania. John?
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, members of the school committee. I'm John Dixon. I am a social studies teacher at the high school, and I'm also the director of the Global Studies program. We had the opportunity in February to spend 2 weeks in Tanzania, overlapping with February break. In the interest of brevity, there's just a few slides and a few pictures. I just want to hit the overall themes of the trip. We did get a chance to experience Tanzanian culture in, I think, a very deep way, both the nature of it. We went to a national park near Morogoro, where we spent most of our time. This is in what's called the Southern Circuit, so it's actually much less visited than the Northern Circuit up near Ngorongoro and Serengeti and those places, which was nice in that it was, again, it was very sparsely visited, so we really, it was kind of just ourselves and the wildlife when we were there. We also spent a few days in Dar es Salaam, including a rather unique tour of going into really the inner city and seeing how ordinary people live. That in the upper right is a faith healer who lives in a fairly lower income area of the city, and that we toured through with some guides. We spent the bulk of our time there at a girls' school, a girls' secondary school in Morogoro, and I got to spend time with their students every day. This is part of our welcoming ceremony in the right, where we got to do some dancing and singing with them and do things like playing netball is the game we were playing with them that evening. But there's a variety of activities we did with the Tanzanian students each day. And we did service work. On the left, we visited a orphanage that had, I think, 50 or 60 children of a variety of ages that we came and brought donations for and spent some time playing with the kids. On the right, we are rebuilding a mural that had been quite tattered, and that was our project for a day, was to recreate new murals on that wall, which our students thoroughly enjoyed. We did various other things at, for example, going to an organic farm and learning how they operate, and as well as weeding a banana plantation at the farm. So, and a variety of things, most of which we did with Tanzanian students. And this was our last day that we went and hiked up in the mountains into this waterfall with the group of students that were our primary hosts. And it was a spectacular experience. I'm sorry I was not able to rally anyone, as Ms. Barnes said. There's a lot of stuff going on this evening school-wise, so I was not able to rally any troops to give you a better presentation than I would have done. But if there's any questions briefly, then I will turn it over to the next trip. Yeah, sure.
I have a question, and that is on the, when the students were with the other students from
Yeah.
Tanzania, how many translators did you have?
So they were, their students at this school all are learning English.
Oh.
So we were able to speak in English with them. In fact, at this point in secondary school, their English is quite good.
Oh.
For most of them, it is a third language, because they grew up speaking a tribal language and then also learning Swahili. But English is also widely taught, and especially this school is an English immersion school.
Okay.
So some of the classes we did were in Swahili, but much of it is in English, and the students were all quite good at English. So we tried to learn a little Swahili, but you can imagine the conversations were generally in English.
Thank you.
Team?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that my daughter was on this trip, and it was phenomenal. I loved following her post and your post, and I just want to say that this trip was so life-changing that my daughter changed her future plans because of this trip and wants to study international relations with an emphasis on women and girls empowerment. So that's how amazing and life-changing this trip was. So thank you very, very much for spearheading
And
this.
thank you for sharing her.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next is, which one's the next? Oh, it's
China?
off.
Nope, speak Spanish. Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Hoff. I'm one of the Spanish teachers here at Monomoy Regional High School. And today I have an entourage of students and families that participated in our second school-to-school exchange with 2 schools in Vigo, Spain. 2 high schools, and I hope you'll give us a little bit of a little extra time on this, just because we have so many very rich experiences that we wanted to share. An exchange is quite different than a trip. We are going as tourists, but we're also going as honorary family members. We become part of a family. We live with a family, and we host a student that becomes part of our family. It's a relationship. We're not just going and leaving it behind. These experiences are also very much life-changing because we're building relationships with these people that will last a lifetime. Some of our students and families are actually returning to Spain to visit again this fall. And so I did want to take a moment to thank the school committee and our administrators for supporting this school-to-school exchange experience. Like I said, Spanish students came here in November. They spent 2 weeks with us. We treated them like family, and then we went over in February 2019. And this was an exchange in every way. Mrs. Chiswick and I, we raised more than $3,000 to provide field trips for our visitors, and I'd like to am I allowed to hand these down the way, just so you get a glimpse of the amount of work that goes into developing an itinerary, coordinating with local agencies like the Cultural Center and the Art of Charity and other organizations like the Rotary Clubs that helped to support these experiences. And so we developed these itineraries on our own with support, financial support, to make these culturally rich and educational field trips come to life, so that students, when they come here, they're not just sitting in classrooms, they get to experience more in their very short and condensed time here. So we raised $3,000, more than $3,000. Families, our Monomoy families, provided round-the-clock support as if the visiting student was part of the family. Students experienced language, culture, history, traditions, and more. And they did that while they were here, and we did it when we were there. It was a true reciprocal exchange. So Monomoy students started their exchange in February, 3 days in Barcelona, and 10 days living with host families in Vigo. And here are some of the experiences I'd like for you to hear from our students. So I'm gonna, there were so many pictures. We're hoping to share this presentation with you, but so many pictures I really couldn't pick and choose, so there's quite a few here. But just to give you an idea, with the families, the students came, they got to experience Thanksgiving, some apple pie for the very first time. I mean, it was just very exciting for them. Stuffing, they've never had stuffing before. We took them to the Plymouth Plantation, the Grist Mill, the Cultural Center of Cape Cod for a cooking class, the Cape Cod Mall, Boston and Faneuil Hall, and the Cape Cod Museum of Natural History, just to name a few. This is what the money of local agencies help to support these really great culturally rich experiences. So off to the students now.
Hello, I'm Jane. I wasn't originally planning on going on this trip, so I didn't get a Spanish family during Thanksgiving. But then I contacted Ms. Hoff, and I got a chance to go in February. And I know basic Spanish just from like elementary school and middle school. So I was a little nervous about like living with the family and talking in Spanish. But once I got to the family, I just picked apart like the Spanish that I knew, and like I could talk basically to them, and they knew English, so that was good. And just like experiencing that culture was just so different. And when I came back, I compared everything to Spain, like just everything. I think my mom got sick of it actually, but I don't know. I talk to my host sister Carolina every day. And I miss her little brother, I miss her 2 older brothers, and I miss her parents. And it was just such a good experience.
Hi, my name's Lainey, and I'm speaking on behalf of Beckett and myself. He couldn't be here tonight, but we spearheaded this speech together. And it's in his perspective, so it doesn't really make sense to me, but so here goes. Signing up for the Spanish trip to Barcelona and Vigo was a decision I made with the hopes of seeing a country I'd heard so much about and truly wanted to visit. My interest in Europe stems from the tales that my grandparents, who lived in Holland for many years, had told me. The stories of the stone buildings, beautiful and unhindered presence of nature that can be found anywhere, and the languages themselves were just some of the reasons for interest. What I found when I arrived in Vigo was a world of almost alien life. From my perspective, as a current Latin 2 student with an additional previous 3 years of Mandarin under my belt, a Spanish-speaking country was the last place that I had felt in my element. But the minute I hopped off the train and drove back to my host family's home, I got to observe what I so deeply wanted to see, the normal lives of those in Spain. My 3 days in Barcelona had exposed me to customs that had become normal by this time. But what Barcelona or any other place in the world couldn't show me was the way of life in Spain. I could tour an infinite amount of cathedrals, markets, streets, and museums, but I'd never guessed that the moments I'd get from this trip were the little ones. I saw amazing and unique places, people, and things when I visited Barcelona, but Vigo was easily my favorite part of the trip. There are no words to describe the horizon over buildings as the sun sets, or traveling to a spa that used natural spring water and still does in some parts. Some things in life can't be toured or put on exhibit. You can look at buildings and listen to explanations, but until you've walked through them and smelled the air, felt the walls, heard the places, heard the sounds, you haven't been to that place. The school my host brother Raul went to in Vigo was called Miralba. Miralba stood tall on a corner in Vigo. We climbed 99 steps every morning to get to class. We took a tour of the school, and throughout the whole time, we were shown nothing but total hospitality. My average day in Vigo consisted of waking up at 7:45, eating breakfast, which usually consisted of freshly squeezed orange juice, which was actually freshly squeezed. In the markets, there are machines that grind up oranges on the spot and give you fresh orange juice. And then what my host family had simply called a tortilla. Then I'd walk with Raul to school and sit in a homeroom type class until it was time to meet up with the rest of the group for a trip. The trip that sticks out most to me was when we walked through an old Roman village set on a hill and crested probably the largest hill I have ever climbed. At the top was a fort with a grand view of the sea and a city sitting across a bay called Cangas. After these trips, we would return to the school and have a very relaxed afternoon. There's something very refreshing about seeing similar things that are typical in America play out in a foreign country. Nothing is more refreshing than sitting with your friends and just eating popcorn and watching a movie in Spanish. This sentiment seems to be shared in Vigo too. Our last day there was a festival called Carnival. The whole school dressed up as superheroes, and it resembled what was like an American pep rally. Every single student in Miralba danced from the preschoolers to seniors. All day we asked our host families, what are we doing tonight? Are we going to be out with our friends? All anyone would tell us was that it was a big surprise. I wondered all day what it could be. We went to Santiago de Compostela. For those who don't know, this is a very ornate cathedral with many pilgrims called peregrinos travel to for religious purposes. Some come from as far as Asia in some cases. We were fortunate enough to witness a pilgrim as he reached the end of his very long journey. We got back onto the bus and waited until night came. We all congregated in a park and stood around for about 15 minutes. Then we began to walk and walk and walk, and finally we reached a small cafe. We climbed up some stairs that were draped with velvet carpet and entered a room with dim lights and music playing. The Spanish students had organized a going-away party for us with soda, pizza, and hamburgers. We danced and sang until our time was over in the room. A half an hour before we were set to leave, Hunter's host brother, Julian, a student from the other school, Carmelitas, called us all together in the center of the room and began to give a speech. He talked about how much fun he had had and how much he was going to miss us all. We then took turns passing around an empty water bottle like a microphone and saying our piece before we left 2 hours later. Many people spoke. We, the American and Spanish students, agreed to meet back up with our host siblings in 5 years. The moment hadn't hit me until I was on the bus back from Boston. I didn't think of missing my host family. I didn't have the need to. But when we got out of Boston and into the highway, I missed them so much. Raul, Julian, Manuel, Victor, Noemi, Alba, Raquel, Paula, Carolina, and Lucia. I missed them all. Overall, my time didn't feel like a trip, but more a sample of what's outside our country. It didn't feel like a vacation or a field trip. It was scary at first, but I'm so glad I did it. Everyone's experience is different. All I can say is that I'm grateful for mine. Thank you.
Wow. Can I explain the picture? Yeah, sure. Okay. So that bottom right picture, that was at Miralba. That was at one of the schools. That wasn't the school I was at. But we went there, and all the grades had all these dances, and like they were all different Disney characters, and we just watched them dance for like the whole morning. And then we just got up after, and the music was still on playing. And all of us, the American students and the Spanish students, were just in the middle, and we were all dancing, and Miss Hoff was dancing, and Miss Chiswick was dancing. Yeah. Hannah, you want to talk about it? Just explain.
The bottom left shows what the markets look like there, and they were way different from here, but I loved them there because it was all like, it was like really made there, and like everything was fresh, so that was a really good experience.
So, while Hannah's up here, I'm Kay, Hannah's mom, and this is going to embarrass her terribly like it did when we talked about Spain. So when I found out they were going on a Spanish exchange trip, I tend to be quite busy and working all the time, and so I sort of said, sure. I said, of course you can go on this Spain trip, whatever. And then the next week I went, oh, where are you going in Spain? And she said, Vigo, Spain. And I was silent for like 5 minutes. She's just looking at me like I'm crazy. And I said, well, I know Vigo, Spain. My parents knew Vigo, Spain. So I'm going to abbreviate this story radically, but my parents sailed from England to this country in the 1960s on their own boat, a 50-foot racing yacht that they had planned to race and sail around the world on. They got shipwrecked in Spain in 1960 in October. They were caught in a 4-day hurricane, and they thought they were through it because they were sailing with a sextant and no electronics. And they weren't. They were in the eye of the hurricane, so they had put their rigging back up and were trying to get some distance away from the coast of Spain. And instead, they got blown into the coast, and they had to abandon ship and swim for shore with my brother, who was 8 months old, tied to my mother's back. And they managed, for hours and hours of swimming, to get up on some beach. They didn't know if they were in Africa or in Spain or where they were. And they managed to get to shore. They dug a hole in the sand and covered themselves up and waited till sunrise. When they sat up, they looked, and there was hundreds of people walking over the sand dunes in a very, very remote coast, and scooped them up, right? This soaking wet little baby and these two parents that looked like they'd been, run through the storm because they had. And they looked up, and when they looked up, they saw the people, but they also saw that their boat, Debonair, had, her mast was broken off. She had a lot of damage, but she was in the shore break. So all 500 people from this small town very close to Vigo, Corbedo, came. They brought their oxen and their cows and everything, and they dragged somehow. They swam out at risk to themselves because it was still quite stormy, and they dragged Debonair up onto the beach so they could save her. So my parents lived in that town for 6 months while they started fixing the boat. The townspeople helped raise my brother, who was a baby then, so I have lots of pictures of him with these townspeople. And I never had gone back. My parents are not alive. They had never gone back. And I knew the stories about this place, but I don't know why we never thought to go back. Life gets busy, right? And you kind of get busy and you think, oh, well, that's just a story. But when Hannah was going to Vigo, I started looking back into it. And because of the internet now, I was able to find out that a lot had gone on because of this, and that they had actually very much wanted to find out what happened to this family that had washed up. And then once they fixed the boat, they sailed down the coast to Vigo, and they finished the repairs in Vigo, restocked the boat, and then sailed to the West Indies and Barbados and whatever. So through the research, I found the boat builder in Vigo. He's still alive, and he remembered my family. The people in Corbedo remembered my family. They were given a Medal of Honor from the government after my parents left, so we didn't know any of this. There's a statue in the town that was built in 2010 on the 50th anniversary of the wreck, about the wreck and the rescue and all this stuff. So Hannah was able to, while she was there, go to Corbedo, and she got to meet the people they were quite elderly now, some of the people that had been young and helped save my parents. So it was pretty powerful. The whole town came out, the press came. They made her this book with all the articles that we didn't know all these articles had been written in the Spanish press. They showed her around, whatever. They have been in constant contact with me since, and been quite excited to keep it's like I've got a 500-member town new family because of all this. What they really want to do is meet my brother, because now he's 50-something, and they really want to see him. He's being a little shy, but what's been incredible is, I think we get so busy, and I don't know, even with we get so quick in our relationships with everybody. And I think what was really cool with our newfound relationship with the people in Corabedo, but also with Noemi, our exchange student. She would do things when she came to our house, like she would sit close to me when she sat. And she'd sort of touch my leg, like she was quite intimate in really nice ways that I think we forget to be when we just live with a family and we're kind of quick with each other and we're all working too much. So she was a wonderful reminder to slow down and have a relationship with somebody. She was an exceptional child. And her English was excellent, which is great because Hannah's Spanish isn't quite up to snuff yet to have a big conversation. So Noemi was quite special and she was quite poised. And she had a great sense of humor, and she was very warm. We still stay in touch with her all the time. She sends me a WhatsApp message about once a month. Hi, Mrs. Slater, how's it going? Tells me she saw a horse or something and thought of me. So it's pretty special. I really feel like we have family in Vigo now because of Noemi and her family. We're going back in October so we can meet more of the people in Corabedo. And we're going to meet the boat builder in Spain that knew my parents. But we're most importantly going to go see Noemi and her family again too while we're there because it's pretty special. I think my son, who goes to Sturgis, has traveled quite extensively on school trips, and Hannah's gone on one now that she has been here. And the exchange is quite different. It's been a really rich experience with the relationships being so connecting and ongoing, beyond just traveling to a place. The relationships I've realized through Corabedo and through Noemi and her family are what make all of this language study and global studies come to have meaning and have relationships. My son just took one of his IB exams at Sturgis, and of course it's an international baccalaureate, so it's an international studies kind of exam that he took this week. And it's talking about developing relationships internationally. And I feel like this trip and this relationship with Noemi is the foundation for all of that international study that your daughter's doing, or that we should all encourage our kids to do in this global climate that we're in and so on. So thank you for supporting the trip. I'm really grateful. I don't know that I would have reconnected with the folks in Spain without this opportunity, but more than that, I'm so happy that Hannah has a sister in Spain because she's pretty special. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just a comment, Mom. What a wonderful rescue story. Because it's made my night. For all of us, we should review our own rescue stories in our own lives, because what a very small world we live in. A couple of years ago, my grandson went to Vigo and had an echoing the same wonderful experience. And it was unique in that November was our Thanksgiving, and we live only a few minutes away from our son, so the boy joined us for Thanksgiving, and the road trips around in the living space over at my son's house, all of those things that we all take for granted. This young man was just amazed with eyes wide open, and at some point of the Thanksgiving dinner, there were about 20 of us, which became very commonplace to all of us. Looked at me and he said, "This is just like in the movies." And you take that home and say, we are very fortunate here to be able to be guest hosts for the other side of Spaniards coming here and taking a look at what this world has for us. So thanks again. My last comment, that we should let John invite you in for another launching of a global studies trip next year, and you tell that story before your daughter can.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. China?
Hi, I'm the Monomoy High School's Chinese teacher, and our Monomoy kids have very great experience to explore Chinese culture and learn Chinese in China and as a global citizen. When they, as a global citizen, they go to take care of the panda, of course, like a panda keeper, and also they clean up the Great Wall. When they clean up the Great Wall, the other countries' tourists, thank you so much to my kids. And also we went to our orphanage. We help a girl find a high school, which is she wants. We talk to the high school. And also my kids all wants to share their experience with everyone. Okay, let's start.
Hello, I'm Peter Casey. I'm a senior, and at the beginning of this, it was kind of a pipe dream. I was looking through different tour companies and different programs that we could go on. I found one called China Educational Tours, and I worked with them to build an itinerary that would help show us the ins and outs of China, not just what's on the surface. So we ended up going to Beijing and into the heart of the country to Chengdu. We saw the Great Wall, we saw the Summer Palace, and tons of different shrines and temples from all over the country. We traveled hundreds of miles overland into rainforests and through jungles to see these pandas. And we went on boat rides and rivers. It was more than I could have ever expected from what it was listed online and what I discussed over the phone. The flight was definitely not short, but it didn't feel as long as it was when we got off the plane. We kept ourselves busy, and it was amazing. I don't think, if I'm speaking for everybody here, I wasn't tired for, at least the first 3 days, and then I was. But it was beautiful. And me and my fellow travelers would like to share with you each day we went, where we went on each day of the trip. So here we go. That's me. That's me. All right, so the most important part of any trip is to experience the culture and the underlying nuances of the people who live in that country. One thing we did was we went to a restaurant, one of the oldest restaurants in Beijing. It's been constantly running under different management for over 200 years, and they still make Peking duck, the mainstay traditional food of Beijing, the same way they did when the restaurant was founded. So it's extremely traditional. It was a good forte into what was going to follow for the next week. We quickly figured out that not many places had forks or knives or spoons or anything. It was chopsticks. So who didn't know how to use them learned quickly if they wanted to eat. So that was an interesting thing. It really told us that we weren't in Kansas anymore. But yeah, it wasn't just the food either. It was table manners were different. It was all the little things that spelled, a different culture for us that really made a difference. The way the food was handled, these lazy Susans in the middle of the table, that's not just this restaurant. It was literally everywhere we went. Family style. There's so many small differences that you wouldn't really pick up on unless you're really inundated with the culture. But once you do pick up on those things, it's really important. And I think all of us got to experience that in one way or another. So.
Yeah. All right, I'm Ryan Shepman. I'm a sophomore at Monomoy. And the first two pictures are our trip to a Chinese high school where students showed us how to make orange sweet and sour duck and teach us how to fold napkins, which was their preparation to go move and work at restaurants. The food was delicious. It was probably one of the best I've ever eaten in my life. And then we learned how to fold napkins for a table setup.
After that, we visited the Summer Palace, which was a residence for emperors, tons of emperors over hundreds of years. And the picture in the top center there is a corridor that overlooks a lake that the Summer Palace sits on. That corridor takes about 15 minutes to walk from one end to the other. And it was commissioned by an emperor for his mother, and over 2,000 artists were painting and drawing the inscriptions and paintings on the walls of the structure. So the entire thing is completely covered in hand-painted pictures and scenes. There's animals, there's different battles, wars. It's peace and tranquility on one side, and then there's war and anger in other places. It's a beautiful thing to do, and I couldn't even believe that the thing existed. I thought, I'm gonna get to the end eventually, and it was still 5 minutes away. So, Wu Hao Shrine. And then we visited our first temple, the Wu Hao Shrine, and that's in the bottom left there. That's one of the buildings in the Wu Hao Shrine. And that, it looks, traditional from the outside. It looks pretty, plain and simple on the outside, other than the ornate, wood carvings and sculptures. But once you walk in, it's covered in gold and different inscriptions and writings, different statues. It's floor to ceiling with gold and silver and diamonds and all the fancy stuff you could ever, imagine. But it's been standing there for hundreds of years. Yes. And if you can see on the left center, there's one statue that's inside, and there's tens of those on the inside, and each one must have taken months to create. They're all hand carved, hand painted. It's an incredible work of art.
From there, we went to Jingshan Park, where we oversaw the Forbidden City. And Jingshan Park was built to honor an emperor who had sacrificed himself for the country. And it's the bottom center picture with the 4 people. And in the background, you can see the Forbidden City, where we went next. And the Forbidden City is 500 years old, and it was home to 24 different emperors. It consists of 1,000 rooms, and you can see in the bottom right there are dragon sculpture, and it is still made from wood from over the 500 years ago.
All right, so this is one of our, oh wait, no, hold on. Hi, I'm Quinn Schuyler. I'm a sophomore here at Monomoy. So this is one of our biggest highlights was, of course, the wall. It was a really crazy place because we went to a lot of artistic, heavy, what do you say, very, very buildings. But the Great Wall, it was built for practicality rather than to look nice. So it was very interesting to see just the base architecture of it. It was I really can't do it justice because you're literally thousands of feet up in the air on this giant wall. It was just a very tranquil, what do you say, humbling experience. So me and Ryan and Dylan and CJ, I thought that was other Ryan, we made it the farthest up to the top, and we got this really awesome looking picture of us, of course, of the mountain ranges, and just like you could see, it keeps going. We went on for at least 30 minutes, and there's still more. But it was just so cool to be on top and just like look out. I have a bunch of pictures from it, but there was this little town that like kind of snaked up the valley as you go up to this part of the wall, and you got to look down, and it looked so interesting because it was just all of these, not misshapen, but like different colored houses and stuff. It was just interesting to see the people down below. if that makes any sense. And we didn't just stop and look. We actually brought trash bags and cleaned up any trash that was on the wall. And we also got pictures. Yes. It was good.
Alright, hi, I'm Peter Voice. I'm a freshman here at Monomoy. And besides the wall, I'd say the most unreal experience was, of course, taking care of the pandas, because there was about 2,000 pandas left in the whole world, and most of them are in captivity at this one area in China. So, you know, you see all these pictures and videos of pandas, and you think, there's no way that they're actually this cute. They are. They are. And unfortunately, as of last year, we were not allowed to pet the pandas, but we were allowed to get a few pictures, which is not as good as petting the pandas, but it was all right. And of course, we were very busy taking care of the pandas, as you can see from the schedule. We basically stayed there the whole day and had food there and all that. Now, actually taking care of the pandas was a lot of fun. We got to dress up in these jumpsuits, walk through this forest of bamboo over to the enclosures, and then when we were inside, we swept up all the panda droppings and all that. And then after we were finished with that, it was pretty hard work. But after we were finished with that, we got to take a few pictures with the pandas, as you can see me right in the bottom middle taking a picture of the panda.
That's a fantastic picture. That's awesome.
And some of us and we actually all got to feed the pandas too. Like they would make these little cakes for the pandas, and they'd give us a few carrot sticks or something, and we'd like kneel down and we'd get a video of us handing the carrot sticks to the pandas. And it was just a whole lot of fun. Yeah, as you can see right in the top left corner.
Hi everyone, I'm Cameron Coomber. I'm a senior here at Monomoy, and I'm going to talk about the orphanage that we visited. So this orphanage, it's not technically an orphanage. These kids are actually in a much worse, they're in a very terrible situation as well as orphans. So their parents at these Sun Villages, they are in jail. So like any parents, when they get taken by the government, their parents, they have nowhere to go, and these Sun Villages provide like a place for them to stay. And so what they do there is they don't just baby them and like take care of them. They teach them how to like build up character. So they have them grow like crops and stuff. They grow strawberries, which were very good strawberries. And as you can see here, we helped them weed one of their gardens in this picture. And we also played some games with them, as you can see in this picture. And we were able, we bought some of the strawberries from them, which the money goes into providing for more like food and clothes for the children. And we also made some donations, a few people who decided they wanted to do that. We were also able to get a list of their names and the address of the orphanage, so we could mail them letters and say hello to them, because they don't have any internet access or phones or anything like that, so we can't email, we have to send them letters. So on to the next. Oops. And this here is the giant Buddha that we visited. This was in Chengdu, the second city that we went to. And first we got on a boat, and there's a lake right in front of the Buddha, and this picture was actually taken on the boat. Actually, no, this picture was taken on the boat. This one is in front of the Buddha. But there is a lake that goes in front, and we took a boat, and it was really cool. We got to see the Buddha all right there. It was a great view. And then, so what we did next is we climbed up the side of the Buddha, and we got to see the Buddha's head up close. It was very cool. And then right here, as you can see, this is the this here is the staircase on the way down, and it's a little scary, but it was very cool. There's a lot of carved Buddhas into the wall, as you can see, like right here. And yeah, so, and then also, so this is from far away. You can see the giant Buddha it's right in here, but if you look, it kind of looks like a sleeping Buddha. That's his head right there and his body. And that's something they noticed after the Buddha was constructed, and it was just kind of coincidence that the Buddha is at the heart of where the sleeping Buddha would be. And then next, this is just talking a little bit about how we learned a lot of Chinese in China. One example of learning Chinese in China was saying the phrase "tai gui le," which means too expensive. Because almost anywhere in China you can bargain with people and get better prices on almost literally anything. And an example of when I used this was actually buying this shirt. I talked the guy down to half price just by saying "tai gui le" over and over. So that worked out for me. Yeah. Is there...
No, I think you got it.
Yeah, I think that's really it.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a program we start with the orphanage, because when the kids leave, I'm the last one to leave. The kids all hold my hands and my legs and cry. Said, "When can you bring your student come back to us?" I said, "I cannot promise you," but the kids said, "We don't have internet, we don't have cell phone. Can you ask your student write mail for us?" So when I discussed with those kids, they said, "Of course, we'll start a program to help those kids to stand up, because those kids, nobody to go to adopt them. They have to waiting for their parents from the jail to release. Some kids' entire life in there. They can't, then later when they grow up, they back to this orphanage, help others. So all by the complaints, organizations help them, so they grow up, they food, everything by themselves. So my kids are very exciting, said we want to help them stand up, being independent later. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I forget, I would like to thank Friends of Art of Charity, there it is, for donating the bus to and from the airport, because we wouldn't have gotten there and back. We don't have too much money, so that worked out great. Thank you very much. If there are any representatives of Art of Charity here, that was very much appreciated. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just to, I guess, provide my reflection on this. I think for those of us who have been here over the long haul, which I think at the moment now might be just Katie and I, that first summer when I first showed up here at Monomoy, and before there was a strategic plan, the administrative team at the time got in a room together, and we were really reflecting on what do we need to put in place to really help this school district come along. And so for those of you who had to put up with my initial presentations to our towns, you would have heard me talk about this promise of Monomoy. And at the time, I had talked about how we wanted to improve a curriculum, expand opportunities, enhance experiences for kids, and ultimately, for the fiscal folks to lower, to deliver school budget with lower school expenditures than the towns have been doing on their own, which we have done, by the way. But to kind of get back to that, that expand opportunities and enhance experiences. It was the vision of that group in that room at the time that if we can go and have our families and our students see beyond the bridges, that we can prepare them to really thrive in a global economy. And it's great to just hear 4 different trips who have headed out and the outcomes of that.
Thank you. Well, After our worldwide tour, we'll go to the CVEC request for the bid of the rooftop solar panel, solar photo panel.
Hi there, yes, more local, but that was
you for being
incredibly
patient, too.
impressive. I'm so glad I was here for that.
You've been around the world.
I have, and I got teary at the Vigo story, and then I wanted a panda for my own. So I guess I digress. So we talked 2 weeks ago about the solar panel installation on the top of the high school, and we've selected a vendor. We have started negotiations, and we're back tonight basically we asked you to consider a vote that basically approves our going forward. We have a statement that, Katie, do you want me to just read it? And it's in the packet? Okay. So our lawyers basically gave you a motion that would make it easy, and it's basically, you're basically saying that you're authorizing the superintendent to sign the contracts once the negotiations are finished, based on his approval and understanding of them as well. And there are two contracts that are involved. There's a lease, and there's an intergovernmental agreement. So those are the two. And frankly, CVEC is the party that works with the developer, with the company that's going to be the installation company. So the intergovernmental agreement is between CVEC and the school district, which then allows us to basically be your representative with the developer. And I think that's pretty much it. And then the lease, but that's pretty much it. So you have that in your package, I guess. Did anybody find it there? The vote to approve the lease with the developer. I can read it if you want.
Yeah.
Got it.
Nancy?
We need to make eye contact.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at everybody.
I'd
but-
like to move to approve the lease with the developer and intergovernmental agreement with CVEC in principle, subject to review of final negotiation and price savings analysis by the superintendent, and authorize the superintendent to sign following final approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. With that, I think I can leave you to it. Just a little timing idea. So we don't think it's going to be anything that's going to happen immediately because everybody's going to be waiting on our Eversource, our utility, for approval of the interconnection plans. And unfortunately, we anticipate that that's going to be a long wait for everybody across the board. Eversource is just kind of tied up. So.
Do you have an estimate of like years?
Oh, it won't be years.
Okay.
There's an investment tax credit that plays into the developer's hands. So they've bought all of the solar panels because that's how they are assured of getting that tax credit. But they will be quite anxious to start early in 2020. Some of our smaller projects, and this is not a huge project comparatively, may start over the summer. But we'll see what Eversource, what they can say. Yes, stamp, go ahead and start. We'll see which ones they approve. A lot of it has to do with the congestion on the lines, and they are the keeper of that. You know, they're the ones who know, oh, well, there's a lot of, for instance, the Harwich Cap landfill has a big solar installation on it, and that may affect being able to install something here because it's already, those lines are being used by a 4 megawatt installation on Harwich's Cap landfill. So that's the kind of thing they're reviewing in the interconnection study.
Okay, thank you. And the
Cape Light.
Cape Light Compact Summary?
So good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Travers. I'm Director of Facilities for Monomoy. So I want to thank the committee for the chance to speak tonight, and I will keep it brief, okay? The kids were great, weren't they? I thought it was just, it was awesome, so worth it. So anyway, I've got some great news about a lighting project that will benefit our middle school. So I'd like to thank our superintendent and business manager for the support that they have allowed me to put the time in to pursue this opportunity of this project that will be very beneficial for the district. So just a real quick history here. The existing lighting fixtures use ballast, this is at the middle school of course, that are obsolete and require an extensive rewiring overhaul of the unit when one does fail. This is at a cost of hundreds of dollars per fixture. Right now, we have dozens that have failed within a short time period. So we work closely with TJ Turner from Rise Engineering, and after 3 years and numerous attempts, we have been approved for a project that will provide LED lighting throughout our building. Classrooms, hallways, offices, gymnasium, etc. Due to the magnitude of this project, it comes with a close to $90,000 price tag with no cost to the district. So this savings, coupled with the repairs that would have to be made to our existing fixtures in order to provide the required foot candles necessary, is obviously a significant savings to the district. Also, we are estimated to save $19,000 per year in electricity costs. This project will change the dynamic of the middle school in many ways. We did the same type of project at HES 2 years ago, and it has been a huge success. The district will work closely with Rise Engineering to get this done ASAP. Be assured that when we do schedule the project, there will be no disruption at all to students. I'll be glad to answer any questions anytime, even if need be, and you wake up tonight and come up with a question, call me anytime. I'm always available, especially with something like this. I was thrilled. This really makes me happy, because we have pounded the pavement to get this project. And as of 3 weeks ago, they still wanted to charge us $25,000 to do it, and we thought that would be a bargain, but to get it for nothing, it's just fantastic. Any
Thanks, Rick.
questions? Yeah, you're very welcome.
That's
I thank
great.
you. Thank you
I
very much.
am so impressed
I'm sorry?
with this. I'm so impressed. It's not very often you can get this kind of situation, so thank you for putting all your work into that.
You're very welcome. And once again, we did that at Howard Elementary, and I mean, we still talk about how vibrant the building looks, and
Yeah.
it just really brought it to another whole, a whole nother, when you walk in, you just get a real good vibe from it, so I'm very excited.
Good.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Rick, while you're there, because they always complain that I talk too long under the superintendent's report, maybe you could talk about lightning strikes.
No, wait. It's gonna
Sure,
cut down
absolutely.
on your time, though, if he talks now.
Absolutely.
So we're clear. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll be glad to. I'll keep it brief.
You
of
can
course.
talk as long as you want.
Well, no, I get to hear myself talk sometimes. But, no, we obviously got hit close somewhere. It was close
I
enough.
heard it.
And Robin's obviously been feeling the wrath of this all week, unfortunately.
I thought my house was gonna split in half.
You
I live
did?
across the street from the elementary
Oh,
school.
okay, so it
Yeah.
makes sense. So we did have some systems down. We had someone go in on Saturday to do some work, one of our custodians, and he called frantically, saying every system was beeping, letting us know that there was a problem. So we got right on it, obviously. Some were easier fixes than others, so now we're dealing with a PA system that is from 1972, that to try to get parts from it. We can make it work, and the gentleman we have on it is stellar. And he will get us back up and running. He promises us that, but there's some components within the wiring within the building that have to be replaced, and he's tracking those down for us. Other than that, there's the set of lights that were, when the generator went on and never went off, but they're hallway lights. It's not as if we don't have lights, we do, but excessively. So we're on it. I think, considering, other than the PA, which of course is definitely an issue, we're on it, and the severity of that, getting that repaired, is known by all of us, and we're on it as best we can be. Once again, just trying to get parts.
Is there a timeline for the PA system? I'm just thinking about
There
emergencies
is.
and things.
Absolutely. As of last night, he said a week to get the parts, and this gentleman will come right out and fix it, because I did explain to him that the principal obviously wants your PA system back, and, but he's a whiz, and trust me on that.
You just see Robin with a bullhorn.
So we are really on it. It's definitely a big deal to us, so.
And no physical damage outside, it just hit the system.
Thank God, no, because we thought of what actually could have been,
Yeah.
and we thought we got away pretty much unscathed, if I can use that word. So considering we're still up and running, other than having the PA right now, that is the main concern.
And Rick, that was in 1972.
Correct, the PV.
When I was in school, and that was 40 strings with cans.
It's an idea, it's an idea, maybe we can do that.
It worked.
How are they gonna upgrade that 1972?
But it still works well. Good thing is we didn't blow the amp on it. It's, once again, components within, so.
Robin can get back to singing now.
I know.
Sharon?
So I want to thank you, but I don't have any more questions about this, but because of what you said about the PA system, I'd like to know, probably from Robin or Scott, what are we doing without the PA? What do we do instead?
Robin's very loud.
You have a principal who hollers.
Have you seen how small Chatham Elementary is? You go down one hallway and it echoes through the other three.
You stand on one corner and it wraps around.
So I'm Robin Mill, principal of the Broken School. So we have put out additional walkie-talkies throughout the building because, of course, we don't use the PA very much anymore. But if there was ever an emergency or anything that we had to do as a stay in place or a lockdown or anything like that, we want to be able to communicate to the building. The good thing is the building's very small and all the rooms are interconnected. So any messages that are going out throughout the school are either being walkie-talkied out or a phone call's made out, and then it is becoming like a telephone chain. And then hopefully the message gets from one end to the other in the right way and doesn't get changed. But we're doing just fine.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Don't go away.
So again, I am Robin Millen, the principal of Chatham Elementary School. So I was asked tonight to come and share our school-wide improvement plan update. We do this at the end of every year. So I'm going to share with you a couple of progress goals. I do want to note for the school committee, but also the public in general, that you can go on our website, obviously through the Monomoy website, and go to our school-wide improvement plan. And under every action step, as things are completed, we upload the evidence and the completion dates and things like that. But for the situation today, I am going to put this into context and address two of our student achievement goals and our wellness goal, and share our progress on that for you tonight. So the context is our student achievement goal. This is goal 2, and it's part A of that goal. And basically, when we measure this goal, it's our achievement gap goal and our achievement initiative that we have. And it basically states by year 3, which is 2021, we want to, or we will, meet or exceed the MCAS achievement in math and language arts, that our students will be equal to or greater than 75% of our students meeting that goal. And just remember that 75% number, because it will make sense in a minute. I just want to set the stage. The other thing, just to note, anywhere that now, because our school-wide improvement plan was written prior to the strategic plan being completed, so we're doing some adjustments in that now, and we'll report on that more in the summer as we kind of tweak this a little bit. But anytime there is a direct connection to what I'm presenting tonight and the current strategic plan, I've noted that on the slide, so it's in blue on all the slides. The second number that I kind of want you to keep remembering is we also have a wellness goal, and that wellness goal is, I'm not going to read it all, but we're measuring that wellness goal based off of growth. It was really important to my school council, if you remember when I presented the school-wide improvement plan last year, that we have some sort of measurement where we're measuring all of our children. Not just our MCAS results, not just this or that we're measuring all of our children. So we do know, and Mrs. McGuire will fix my percentage when I say this, but if we embed wellness goals and deal with the social, emotional, and the wellness of our students in the variety of ways that we have decided to do that, we will see an increase in growth and achievement in our children. So we're measuring our wellness goal by that our children will their growth index, and again, this will make sense in a minute, will be greater than or equal to 60% for all of our students. So just remember 75% achievement and 60% growth. So the format for today is the same thing that we do with the staff, and whenever we get any information to measure and keep track of the progress of our goals, we use a protocol, and we use a what, so, what, now, what protocol. So I just want to explain that to you. Whenever we sit down as a team and look at data, we always put a picture, or we always talk about our children first. We talk lots of numbers, we talk lots of science in this, but we always want to remember we're doing this for our children first. So when we collect the data, that's the what.
We collect all sorts of data. It just depends on what we're trying to figure out. Then we say, so what? What is that data? What's the story that data is trying to tell us? And then we always say, well, this is a great story, but we are the ones that are driving the conclusion of the story. So then now what do we do now that we have this? So I'm going to share with you the data, and I'm going to share with you the so what and the now what. So what you have up there is, and I know you've seen this, but for those of you that are new on the committee, that is our MAP, our Measure of Academic Progress quadrant. And we get this data 3 times a year. It establishes growth on the left-hand axis, and then achievement on the right. You'll see, I think in the past, for some of you that have been around, it was a typical 25, like it looked like a regular quadrant. Each side was equal. What we've done at Chatham Elementary is moved our goal lines higher in achievement. So you'll see on the bottom axis, on the x-axis, you have 75% achievement line. And you see we moved our growth percentage up to 60%. So again, a little context, but all those dots are children. That's kindergarten reading. That's our winter quadrant. So you'll see that what we want ideally is everybody to be up in that top right quadrant. Second best quadrant to be in is that left upper quadrant, because that means you're still at the lower achievement, but you have high growth. Higher achievement, low growth is that bottom right quadrant, and low achievement, low growth. So we want a trend line to look that way if we're achieving our growth. So if you remember the numbers, we want by the end of all of our children to reach that 75% academic benchmark. So in kindergarten reading, we're at 65% of our children read. If they've been able to project where children will come out on the MCAS starting in kindergarten. So with the data that we have right now, if they stay in the same projection that they're going to be going in, when they come out of 3rd grade, they anticipate that 65% of our students will be reaching the achievement, the proficiency achievement. What we also want to do is that 60%, because we know that if we are higher than 60 on our growth, we're going to start closing those gaps. We want that conditional growth percentile to be over 60, because then we'll have 70, 75, 80, 85% by the time they reach there. And if you look, we're not yet reaching the achievement goal that we set for ourselves, but we are meeting our growth goal for reading. I will be happy to answer questions, but hopefully it will get. So, this is the same thing for math. So we're going to measure our achievement. We have 53% of our students projected to be proficient in math starting in our kindergarten. And then our growth goal, we're exceeding, we're at 74. And again, that means more than a year's growth in a year's worth of time. Here's our grade 1 reading. 73% of our students are anticipated to be at proficient or above in the MCAS. And then they're still outgrowing a typical year's progress. The growth goal is 67. Grade 1 math. 67% of our students are hitting that achievement level. And our growth goal is far exceeding at 84. Grade 2 reading. 60% of our students are meeting the achievement goal. And they're meeting the growth goal at 65. Grade 2 math. 50% of our students are projected to be at that achievement level. And they're exceeding the growth goal at 67. Grade 3 reading. Bigger cohort, you can see more dots. 78% of our students are achievement level and exceeding the growth goal. Grade 3 math is where we get a little concerned. And this is the same story I had last year for you, and we're still analyzing the story, and I'll address some of the things that we talked about in the now what section. So we're at 55% of our students at the achievement level, but our growth goal is only 37. So those kids are making progress, but they're not closing those gaps. Grade 4 reading, 61% achievement. And if it comes up, I got the growth goal. And they're approaching the growth goal at 51. So these are the same students I reported on last year because of this cohort to cohort. They were in the same situation as they were in third, that we just saw in our third grade, but now they're starting to raise those growth goals again.
So the ones that are grade 3 this year were the ones in grade 2 last year?
Yes, so
Okay.
everything's
So
moving
it's
up,
all in
exactly.
the same group?
Right.
Okay.
And here's the math. So again, the growth goal is minimizing, or I mean, it's getting higher, so they're making greater than a year's worth of progress. And so you'll see that our achievement is not yet reaching, but it's higher than it was when they were coming out of the third grade year. So what? So we take all of those data points and all the other data points that we have and information that we gather throughout the year. And this year we turn the tables a little bit. Usually we discuss a lot of this as PLCs during our release days. We work back and forth. What we did this year is I sat down individually with each and every teacher and we had success chats. I met with classroom teachers, UAs, instructional leaders. I met with the special education department. I met with the instructional assistants. And we talked about, okay, so what's going well? Like, why are we getting these great growth goals? What is what are the wonderful things? Celebrate those, because we really have to celebrate what we've got, and then we've got to push farther on the ones that are a little bit more concerning. And it was funny because I thought we would talk all about the great things, and the teachers really wanted to inform me about all the things that they wanted to do next, and what are the not yets. So what you have in front of you, and I'm not going to go through all this, was it really started coming into kind of themes. And when something came up more than once, you'll see it in bold. So, they like the schedule, they like the intervention and the rotations and the DI and things like that. But not yet, as we need a scope and pacing schedule to focus on standards. Now, if any of you were sitting during the strategic planning, we knew that. We didn't unveil anything that we didn't already know. Some of the ELD things that they liked, we've been spending a lot of time creating interdisciplinary units. You've talked about the pathway units. You've talked about all those things that we've had. It's funny because usually in an elementary school, you'll have a very literature-rich environment. A lot of fiction is being read, and kids are usually really strong in fiction and not so strong in nonfiction in elementary school. We've got the complete opposite because we focus so much on the nonfiction at the elementary school, so now we got to balance things a little bit. So this is where all these adjustments and some of the dialogue is happening that on the now what you'll see. Math, a lot of discussion. A lot of the positives, the math and focus, doing it with a fidelity. They like the spiraling. They love what we call Freyer models for vocabulary. But you'll also see a lot of what came out on the positives is also the not yets. We're seeing a real deficit in the program of the spiraling of the math in this program. And in fact, when we've been working with Math and Focus and having later trainings, they're also seeing it, and they're training our teachers on how to employ more of the spiraling that needs to be happening. Fact fluency, math vocabulary, all of those things, and again, I'll share what we came up with the now what's, but that came up as not yet. Response to intervention is RTI. It's where we put in our interventions and enrichments. We have 2 blocks in every day, a half an hour for what we call no excuse period for ELA intervention and enrichment, and a half an hour of math intervention and enrichment where no new content is being taught, but kids who need support, similar to the seminar block at the middle school, where interventionists are pushed into a grade level, enrichment people are pushed into a grade level. We provide the classroom teachers with as many support personnel as we possibly can. I'm running enrichment classes this year. I'm running intervention classes this year as well. So we're pushing as much manpower as we can, human capital, into them. And that's working. We're getting some great results out of that. What we need to do, though, is really work on kind of, and again, you'll see this in the not what, but the consistency of assessments. How are we tracking those assessments? What is being normed? All of those things. And then instructional strategies. We've come up with this phrase at our school that is every minute matters. Yeah. the crayon-killed elementary school in some ways sometimes, so we're trying to really push that forward, that every single minute that we have in a day is minutes that matter. So that's been a really strong instructional strategy of teacher and student accountability. I talked about coherence last year on how we need internal accountability. That's really coming through that. The other thing that we need more of is more of the deep learning and more of the heavy focus on standards again. So now what? Again, so we take all this stuff, we have to move forward, we have to write our conclusion. So between the school council and all the teams at school, we know we need to continue to investigate what's going on with the math. It's there, it's in our face, we have to do something about it. So we have talked as an instructional leadership team that we're going to add a spiraling component to the math and focus. We've trained 3rd grade, 2nd grade, and 1st grade on calendar math, or daily math they call it, as part of the math and focus program. But they weren't putting it into all the different grade levels. 1st grade was using it consistently, and they were knocking their scores out of the park. So we've trained 2nd grade, we've trained 3rd grade, we've bought the materials. They're starting to already do it. They've put it into place already, but we're going to really make sure that spiraling component is in our program consistently. We're going to enhance our focus on mathematics vocabulary. We have some math vocabulary that the math and focus doesn't match MCAS doesn't match math and focus, and then there's some vocabulary that we're just not hitting to the depth of knowledge that our children need to have in order to, perform and to do mathematics to the depth that is required now within the standard. So we have some ideas out there as to how we're going to enhance the focus on the mathematics vocabulary. And then we're going to explore multiple representations when designing the lessons. We've talked a lot in the strategic plan about the universal design for learning, which basically is multiple representations, seeing things in multiple ways, really finding a way, and it says there, to optimize teaching effectively for all students, not making students fit the teaching, but the teaching fit the students. So we're really working on capacity building for the teachers. How do you design lessons in this format? How do you see and the representation and the action and the expression and the engagement of those representations? So we've been doing that over the last several years, but we're going to really delve into it in the math instruction. And I'm not going to read all of those, but there are additional steps also just for the broader program. Obviously, we are, I know Melissa McGuire has presented, but we are adapting, and we're not going to do a pilot anymore next year. A second step, BOTFIN, is going to be a K4 program. We are going to be continuing on the scope and sequence with ELA, with the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Director, Mr. Smith, and then also with Harwich, making sure our scopes and sequences are aligned and that all children in Monomoy are getting the instruction that they all deserve and need. We're in our last year, our final year of our ELA pathway. We're going to finish that. Obviously, we have the science frameworks that we're going to be working on and the new integration of the science program. We have hired our science teacher for next year. So as soon as I know she's signed, we're very excited to have her. And then the identifying the priority areas for the response to intervention. We know we have some work in responsive intervention to still do. We will do that. And one of the, and obviously the adjustment of all these things in our school-wide improvement plan, but one of the most exciting things that we have done this year, and it's just happened by happenstance, it's a partnership that we've gotten involved in, and it's called the New Pedagogies for Deeper Learning Partnership. We're currently working with South Coast Educational Collaborative, and also with schools all over the world. And I would love to come present some more on that at another time, but that partnership has been amazing, and we're really deepening our learning through that partnership. So obviously you can get more information online, and this is where I was trying not to cry this year, but I always have to give a public announcement as to our retirees and tell them thank you. So Miss Janice Campbell is retiring. So 34 years in Chatham and Monomoy. Everybody's shaking their head. She wanted me to tell you that she's 2 years in grade 3. She looped to grade 1 or grade 2. She went 1 year in grade 4, and then she has spent 30 years in grade 1. Wow. Amazing career. And then Ms. Susan Dominic is also planning her retirement. She has worked with students from preschool, our babies, age 3, all the way to the post-grad students. Wow. For either Chatham or Monomoy, for a collective total, she's been in and out and as different positions, but 20 years as an occupational therapist. Wow. And since I have the public and I have all you right here. Just reminding you, there is a vote on Monday, May 13th, and please come out to support the community playground.
Very good.
I was just, I'm just so impressed with the process and the models used and the constant evaluation and resetting of goals. I mean, it's so impressive. Going back to just one specific, because I'm a concrete person.
Yeah.
Back when you talked about every minute matters, is that an idea or is it a concrete way?
Yes, it's an idea and a concrete way. So it came from one of our newer teachers. She is trained in Brown, and they have that idea that if you are going to do something in a school day, it's got to be connected to learning in some way.
But they're not outright said that, I've been told that.
The children or the adults?
Both, yeah.
The adults, that's what our theme is.
Okay.
That if we were to, if I was to come into a room and children or adults were doing something, I need to we clearly visible know how that connects to a standard. I can give an anecdote. Mr. Smith and I were walking around the building the other day, and there was some great learning going on, but we were like trying to figure out where in the standards that learning was happening, and we couldn't find it in the current grade level standards. So we sat down with the team and we said, just explain, let us know what it is, in a very collaborative, supportive way to say, we have 6.5 hours a day. This is great learning, but it's not the learning we need to be doing right this minute. And the staff has been great. They're really focusing on what is important. I know Mr. Smith says we have all those days of standards that we can't possibly get to. What's our focus?
I love it.
You have to read the book Focus by Schmoker, too.
Excuse me, Sharon, she had her hand up. Sharon?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very impressed also. I love all that growth that's happening.
Great.
It is great. A couple of things I didn't quite understand, and could you just translate what CIA means?
Curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Okay.
That's, yeah, I know. That's Mr. Smith over there, his high security clearance.
And the other thing is, I'm not sure if you can do it that quickly, but is deeper learning something you can say something about quickly or not?
Sure. So the new Pedagogies for Deeper Learning is a partnership. It's very hard to explain, but it basically is a partnership of educators and schools. There's about 1,100 schools in the partnership across the world. And in that partnership, it's growing every year, but within that partnership, what they are working on is developing learning and helping districts and schools and educators develop learning that really focuses on the 6 C's, like communication, creativity, collaboration, citizenship, all of those things that we know are essential for great learning, but also great at life. And so it pulls, we just had a team go out to Washington and do that, and they had a great visual, and it was a double helix. So it was the academic on one helix and then the deeper learning on the other, and the social emotional learning kind of connecting the two. And that's really what this partnership is doing. But again, it is a kind of a complex, abstract. It's not a program, it's not anything. It's really teaching teachers how to teach.
So let me just ask you if you can recall in the future that you say everything very quickly. We have a short period of time.
Okay.
If you come across something that talks about those C's or any of this that could be brief, that you could email to me or all of us, that would be great.
So if you go npdl.org.
npdl.org, okay.
It's all right there.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Terry?
Thanks, Robin. Just some reflections. We humorously joke about the 1972 PA system. And
I was trying to figure out how to get better.
back in the day, in my experience, we were lucky to have an analysis of the Iowa Test of Basic Skills to chat with mom and dad and forget the youngsters. And I echo Donna how I've always been intrigued with process as opposed to the actual delivery, which they're co-equally important. Just the format here, the clarity just jumps out, and I too in the day, could I have used this skill for a classroom post-meeting regarding classroom skills and gifts, because in my memory, I didn't look deep enough or the material wasn't there. But so many bag of tool tricks similar to surgeons and hospitals and health aides, that I see educators gaining that confidence in, that just can only cause the end of process and the beginning of the youngsters picking up these things. And then when you look down here, it's so clear as to where we're headed with this. So I commend you for putting this down. And a last question, was this the third of 3 mapped tests for the youngsters, or was this the second of 3?
This was a mid-year, so we're
So there's one
anticipating,
more.
right, so we'll have the end of year in
Yeah.
June.
Yeah. Thanks.
Jackie?
Thank you, Robin, as usual. I'm learning a lot about pollinators in my household.
Oh, I bet.
A lot about pollinators.
That would be the capstone project.
Everything's a pollinator. I have a question about the spiraling program. You had mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, kindergarten and first grade, you guys have been really pushing forward with the spiraling program. And then I went back to look at the meeting growth goals and the exceeding growth goals. And maybe I'm over analyzing it, but is it the direct effect of the spiraling program with grade K and 1? Because they're both exceeding growth goals?
Right. I don't know.
Is there not sure yet?
Again, at the younger grades, you grow faster. So
Right.
your growth goals are always going to be a little bit more inflated in some ways, although it's comparative to a norm, so, you could say no.
Okay.
But what we are finding is that in those 2 grades, where that is one missing component in the other grades that aren't growing as fast. So again, we're kind of like
Possible
doctors, we're
correlation.
trying to figure
Yeah.
out, it's like what antibiotics do we use and what
Yeah.
isn't happening. And so when we do this analysis, we say what's the same, what's different, what's missing. So, and then when second and third grade went into kindergarten and first grade and looked at what they were doing, they're like, oh, yeah, that's what, that's where we're kind of weak. And these standards are being addressed here, and we're not cycling them through. So a lot of that's like place value, some of those foundational skills, those progressive skills that we really need kids to be solid on so that they can do those other higher level thinking in mathematics. So we're gonna.
So it'll be interesting to
treat it.
follow this K and 1 team through.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Joanne?
twice I've written to myself scope and sequence, and I talked to Mark about it. I know what a hard job that is, and I know you're doing it within your school and between, and I just say, keep going. I know that's really difficult, and I appreciate you doing that, because I think it makes everybody's life easier eventually.
Yes.
Not right now. We're getting there.
I love that,
Thank
yeah.
you, that's terrific.
Sharon?
And so, as a wrap-up to all of that, I like so much that you had this at the last page of that, because these are 2 women that I worked with for decades, and they are, Janice Campbell and Sue Dominic, they are the epitome of the tops in their field in many ways. And since it happens to be Teacher Appreciation Week, maybe you could express back to the teachers how much we appreciate, not just at Chatham Elementary, but all of the schools, all their efforts for. They're all doing these kind of things. Thank you. Thank
That would be great. Yes. Yeah. I think we, as educators, we need to celebrate all that good. There's a lot of children and families that have been impacted because of that. And Janice is a product also of the Chatham system.
Yes,
She graduated
she is.
just a few years before me. But she is our homegrown,
That's right.
So it's been wonderful.
That's right.
Just one question. This is so wonderful. Thank you so much. My question in the math section, not yet, math vocabulary, the MCAS disconnect. Can you speak to that just a little bit? I'm just curious.
Obviously, Math and Focus is based in, they don't like it, but it's a Singaporean math kind of process, the way that they do it. And some of the language that they use is not the same language as we would put on a typical assessment question. And I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Well, it depends, but like they use a lot of words like decomposing and composing numbers, and there's another one that I just can't think of right now. This is what happens when it's the 14th hour of my day. But they, when you get down to an MCAS and they say, okay, add two-digit numbers together and explain what it is, it's not saying decompose these numbers or what's the fastest route to those numbers. It's just the difference in the language between the program and our state assessment. And it doesn't mean it can't be connected, but we're finding that we need to purposely connect it. So within like our third grade classroom, they'll have a language wall, and this is where we're talking about adding more to it. So they'll have a math word wall, but now they're thinking of connecting those math word walls to all the other experiences, that a learning experience where they're seeing that word that connects to addition, or, you know, think of all the words for addition, you know, add.
Yeah, combine.
You know, so it's making a more visual connection in the brain, that when you see a word that means the same, it means to do this.
Right. Okay.
And that's
Thank you for that.
what a lot of children going, what does that mean? You know, and
Right.
they know the concept, but they just don't know what the question's asking. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to, you know, put a appreciation in for Robin. I'm sure that Robin was like, why me? Why first? You know, it's like, and I think in many ways, and I shared this, you know, personally with Robin, I think in many ways she is a wonderful leader of her staff when it comes to looking at issues and looking at data. But I also think she's a wonderful leader on our team and sort of setting a good example of how to go about it. You know, so I appreciate her going first, and I apologize, you know, for frequently tapping her to go first with these data conversations. But it sets a good model and a good bar to have others reach.
Every minute matters.
It's going to be our new motto, isn't it?
Okay, the job description revision for the district accountant.
So in your packet, there's a job description that we have put together, just, you know, sharing with everybody out there who might be watching. We had in our last executive session a conversation about taking and paring back our district treasurer's job a bit now that the building project is done. But we also have a district accountant, and that district accountant has been picking up a lot of sort of the front-end things that the treasurer's doing. So we have created a position. It's not a new position, but it's just to acknowledge the work that the district accountant has been doing, sort of front-loading things for the district treasurer. So we've just really retitled that position, the district accountant / assistant treasurer, and this is a job description that's updating based on what she's really doing functionally in her job.
Is this considered our second reading? I mean, the last meeting, they were two separate documents, so is this our first reading of this technically?
Well, this would be the first time it's in public session,
Okay.
that we've had
Okay.
discussed it in public session.
Got it.
Before we go on, can you identify that hum?
What? Donna, what hum?
I can hear the hum.
Because we can hear it.
Unfortunately, we let Rick leave.
I know, that's what I was looking for.
Point of order.
No,
Where's Rick when we need him? It's in Alliston's.
Halfway home.
he told us we could call him anytime, though.
That's right.
What home? I hear it all. Nice.
Every minute matters here. Every minute matters.
Every minute matters.
Start talking. No.
All right, so I wanted to just spend a few minutes, and there's several slides to this. I'll have to go quite quickly if we want to have every minute truly matter. But we did a family community needs survey. The reason for this is to look at what sort of supports do families need, looking at the time frame from really infants and toddlers all the way up through middle school, and you know, looking at what sort of supports families might need, including, you know, before school, you know, after school, and summer supports. So just to kind of foreshadow why we do this. It's to you know, to sort of inform us in terms of how we can move aspects of the strategic plan forward. One of those aspects of the strategic plan is really to look for finding community partners that we might be able to partner with to better support families, looking at even infant toddler support and preschool supports within the empty classrooms that we have in our school buildings. So this not only gives us information, but it also allows us to share this with any potential partner, because they would ask, well, what is the magnitude of need? Where do families, families need support? So this hopefully will answer some of those questions. So we sent this out. It was open just before, the survey was open just before April vacation. We closed it this past Sunday. In terms of response, we had 268 respondents to the survey. Most of them were from families that live in Harwich and Chatham, and then there's a variety of other ones that responded because we are a school choice community that that has some families from a variety of different places, places on Cape Cod who may need supports for their children, before school, after school, or summertime. So they show up in here. I'd also like to thank Lucy Gilmore, who's our Monomoy Family Resource Coordinator, because we wanted to get this to Monomoy families that aren't even with us yet. Joy helped us in pumping this out on social media. Lucy helped get out to families who have infants and toddlers and don't even have kids in our school system yet. So we had a pretty good response to this. Another thing that we're interested in is, for those that responded, what percent of those families actually need or getting financial support, be it WIC support, SNAP support, vouchers for childcare, but free and reduced lunch. So almost 20% of the respondents are families that are having financial need. So in terms of infant toddlers, 78.7% of the respondents said they didn't have infants and toddlers, but 21.3% of the respondents did. That came out to, we had 57 respondents with infants and toddlers when asked, is there adequate infant toddler care in this area? 84.2 said no. We asked what type of child care they're using. 19.3% say they don't use any sort, and we can go and drill down into it to try to tease out, is it economic resources or what? The majority of those that are getting supports are sort of relatively evenly split between child care in their home, a relative's home, or child care provided by a daycare center. And then this didn't surprise us when we got it, but if you look at what are the biggest challenges, the one big challenge that that folks note for infant toddler care is that the high cost of it's really straining household budgets. And then when we were going into these initial conversations, one of the things that we were thinking, as our instinct was that the void out there in our community is sort of what I'd call full day, full year supports for families. So when asked the question, if available in the area, would your family use or be interested in infant toddler care open year round from roughly 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and only closed for major holidays? And in this case, 91% of the respondents said that's really what they'd be looking for. Preschool, we had 27.6% of the respondents had preschoolers ages 3 to 5. When asked, is there adequate preschool options in the area, we we found that 58.9% of them said no. We asked them what type of preschool they have, they're using. The largest percentage are using what they termed on the survey preschool provided by another school in the area. So Monomoy has preschools, so we have an integrated preschool and we have our Make Way for Kids program. But again, a challenge for some families is those aren't available year round, and they aren't full day. They're half day. At least for the integrated preschools, they're half day programs. Back to the what are the biggest challenges you have? Again, the big thing that stands out there is the 75.7% of the families said the high cost of childcare and preschool strains the household budgets. And then we went back and asked that full day, full year question again. And here again, we had 86.5% of the families said yes, a full day, full year option would be something they'd be interested in. In terms of elementary school, we had 60% of the respondents have a child in kindergarten through grade 4. In terms of which elementary school your child attends, clearly my Harwich Elementary number is a typo up there, but the majority of them were from Harwich Elementary School, and then a small number of respondents have children that are attending St. Pius. We wanted to know if families needed childcare or would be interested in childcare before schools. I think a lot of our elementary families, haven't been using it, in part because you can get your child on the bus at roughly 7 o'clock, and they head into school. But for some families that we wanted to see in that little window before school, most of the families were saying that before school wasn't something, or wasn't a support that they need, but still roughly 22% indicated that some before school support might be good. Do you need after school supports? Here we see the reverse. We see 70% of the families saying that they do need or use after school supports. And then we go dive into what type of after school care do they currently use. And the families, you can see, are sort of all over the place in terms of the different types of programs that they're using, with a quarter of them saying they don't use any sort of child care for their elementary schools, all the way down to the one at the very bottom, where there's one parent says, my kid comes home and is home alone. We looked at how frequently they're using. So do they participate in the or do they never participate in the program? It's the blue sliver, which is 14.6%, to the purple sliver up there, which is they participate daily in after school care, which is 22%, and then sort of on the on a continuum between those two. And then we looked at how late do you need supports? So is it do you just need support on early release Wednesdays, which was 7.5% of the families? Do you need support all the way to 6 p.m., which is 11% of the families? So we were just trying to again tease out how late in the afternoon at the elementary level do we need to really look at where families need support. But clearly, the vast majority of the families that are using our after-school care need support at least until 5 p.m. We also had an open response question to the survey asking what sort of improvements would families want to see to the existing after-school care that's offered at the elementary school? And I'd like to thank Joy for going through all the different responses and pulling out the themes here. Again, affordability is important to families. Homework supports. There's a number of respondents that are concerned that these programs are filling up or having waiting lists, including, I think some people even on the committee at times have mentioned concerns about that. Just the flexibility. What if I have to change my schedule? What if I need it on a particular day? How flexible and adaptable are the programs? And then just consistency and clarity in terms of how some of the programs are running, and then just making sure that there's appropriate staffing in the programs. We also, for the elementary and middle school students, we're looking at summer programming. Because again, if we want to really look at how do we wrap around and support families, let's also consider the summer. 17.7% of the elementary families said that they don't need any sort of summer supports for their child. But if you think about that, that means that that the other 83% of the families are saying they need some sort of support for their children during the summertime. 38% of them we're saying full day, full week childcare is what they need. About a third of them were looking at some sort of part day, part week care, core occasional activities. And again, I think there was one respondent that I think said something that that I think we need to keep in mind. This notion of they needed to not have a gap between when school's over and when the program begins, because that occasionally happens. And I highlighted one of the comments that a parent made, and that if there were more options that I could afford, I'd be able to work more, which would improve that parent's standard of living greatly. So I think that's sort of that theme on the cost. The cost and the ability to access supports is a recurring theme throughout this. Is there anything that limits your elementary school child's access to after-school programs or summer programs? Again, 54% bring up cost. Transportation's an issue. There, you notice that almost 14% of the families were indicating that transportation's an issue, and then there's a range of other responses up there. For middle school, we had 35% of the respondents had middle schoolers. We asked very similar questions at the middle school level. Remember, the middle school's starting an hour later than the elementary school. So do you need support before school? There's a small amount we're saying that they need support at 7 a.m. But if you start looking at this window, do they need support somewhere between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m.? It's that nearly 40% of the families are saying something before school's what they would need. We asked what type of before school offerings would be most useful. Again, they could choose more than one, and you'll notice that there's they were gravitating greatly towards academic tutoring clubs and different sorts of physical activity. Which school programs currently available for middle school students does your child use? 76% of the respondents talk about the clubs, sports, and tutoring that are happening after school. Within our own middle school, only 12% of the families say that their children don't use any sort of after-school programming, And then there are the different programs that are available in the town and how many. I also noted that there are a couple that, that commented, that, Chatham's, just the distance from Chatham, Chatham from home. How frequently does your child participate in the after-school programs? Only, on this one, only 11% say that their child never participates in after-school program. And then on the purple is 16.3% indicate that they participate every day. What type of after-school offerings would be most useful to your child? Again, a spread across, the arts, to sports, to tutoring, rather evenly spread across all of those. How long does your family need coverage? Again, looking from the end of school to 6 p.m., about half of the respondents were indicating that they don't need coverage for their middle school students. And again, you could understand that, sort of the age progression. So families are a little more, comfortable with not having the support for their middle schoolers. And then you see that almost a quarter of the families are saying that they're going to need support at least till 5. And then we get to the improvements. Again, thank Joy for her compiling of these, but improvements that they'd like to see for the after-school program or programming. I should say at the middle school, not the elementary school on the slide. So at the middle school, they're saying more academic support, one-on-one tutoring, more club sports. Again, that's different than the school teams. Later hours or another late bus, and late buses on Fridays. We run late buses Monday through Thursday, but not Fridays. Clubs that aren't sports focused, and then avoiding, being able to have your child be able to do theater and a club or sports and a club, and then just better communication from the coaches on schedules. And then we get to the summer questions for families. And again, it's this one's sort of almost evenly split on, about a third of the families saying they don't need any sort of summer enrichment, to relatively equal amounts saying full day versus part day versus occasional. And then is there anything that limits your child's participation? Again, similar to at the elementary level, cost was the big one, and then for families that the transportation, particularly the transportation at the summer, the next highest one in that. And there we go. That's run through the survey. So as I said, the next steps for us is to sort of look at this as we look at how we develop programs for ourselves, share this with our before school and after school entities that work with us right now, but also use this data to go and share with potential partners as we look forward to how we can better support families in Harwich and Chatham.
Sharon?
Scott, is this on the school website or will it be?
It's not on the website yet because I'm presenting it to you first. I'll
Okay.
tweak the other things.
So will it be later then?
I'm good. Jack?
No, I'm good.
Tina?
Several comments. First of all, this is excellent, and I am just thrilled to see the data. I'm the vice chair on the Commission on the Status of Women for Cape and the Islands, and childcare is huge. It's a huge issue, and I love that we've done this because we have some really hard data to work with. And what was interesting to me is just having come from town meeting in Harwich, we heard a lot about affordable housing. Well, childcare is huge as well, and this is really showing all of that. And I know we've had conversations here at school committee about looking at some of the declining numbers from families coming in. Well, now we can see why, not just the affordable housing, but also the childcare. I love Lucy Gilmore. I've worked with Lucy in other areas. She does such a fabulous job. And I was struck by looking at this thinking, when we made that time change, and there was a lot of like, I don't know if we did this right, I think it looks like we got it right, based on this data. So I think that time change actually turned out really well, considering what I saw. This is a real passion of mine, because I had a mother for 40 years that had a preschool and a daycare. So this is like really, I'm just so passionate about this. So thank you, whoever had this idea of doing this survey. I really love where you're going with this.
And part of it is to have actual data to go back up gut assumptions.
Yes.
When I've gone to talk to potential partners, I've had groups come in and pitch ideas to me, and they're more of the same. And I'd push back saying, my gut is that what's missing for families here is this full day, full year. And of course, this really, I think, loudly says that full day, full year is that missing piece in our two communities. So, so I think it at least gives us sort of a place to stand to say, okay, a partner that we want to look at is one that can provide and fill the gap, as opposed to provide something that already exists that families are saying is inadequate.
I agree that it's good information to have, and I think Chatham has taken that step as well by knowing that this was a problem. It's on the town meeting warrant for this year to pass vouchers for preschool age. But I also want to agree with the year-round, because as a year-round worker, full-time, there are those gaps, there's holes. It's great to have the kids home for vacations when you go away on vacation, but what do you do with them when I still have to go to work? And then also that good question in there with the after school lets out before summer programs begin, because there usually is that week of lag time where, again, what do I do with my kids? Because I'm not taking a week's vacation to stay home with them. So I very much appreciate this, and I think the towns will as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Joe?
Thank you. Dr. Carpenter, what, if anything, in this survey has surprised you? And what, if anything, has changed your perception of this situation?
I don't think there's anything that has surprised me. I think the one quote that I highlighted really touched a nerve for me, that the affordability of childcare limiting a parent's ability to go provide, to make something better for their family, to position themselves better. It's sort of like, do I choose to improve our situation, but I can't afford to improve our situation. And I think if there are things that we can do to help that parent and similar parents, I think we can improve life for a lot of families. So I think so I'd say there weren't a lot of surprises for me. It was on some level somewhat comforting that the gut assumptions that I was having were sort of clearly supported by the numbers that came in.
Terry?
Insightful for me with coming at what my generation represents, not beating up on that date of 1972 of the WPA, but I'm sure the whole American lifestyle, all for the good, has created pluses and challenges, and we see that in that review, because I came from an experience where I had a wife who was able to stay at home and raise 1, 3, 4 children, whatever it might have been, and take care of all of that operation. And what was my sacrifice? Well, maybe I only had one salary coming in, and that was that, or I worked 2 jobs. That's impossible now. I felt so saddened to see one of the quotes that a mom or a dad, probably a mom, said, I can't go out and get a job because I have to stay home full time because I can't afford to go out and get a job. And that was maybe foreign in 1970, where it was kind of the given. Now, you can't afford not to go out and get a job because you can't afford to stay at home and have a decent plan to bring up a family. So there's the data that can be worked on, and now if there were agencies, we could begin to think of a great way to fill a couple of our classrooms in the next 5 years if it came to that with programs.
Now we just break even.
Yeah.
Work to pay.
Yeah.
Can I make just one more comment? The whole year-round thing is very interesting to me, having come from a school district before we moved here that had 2 and 3 year-round schools. Certainly that serves in keeping kids who need that, but it also, quite honestly, served a childcare need for a lot of families. And I think that's interesting, when you really think about all this. And again, coming right out of town meeting and hearing about the young families and their struggles of living here, I just can't stress enough. I mean, this is important, very important, and thank you again for gathering this data.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, next thing on the agenda is the superintendent contract. And I will say the school committee in executive session prior to tonight's meeting voted to extend Dr. Carpenter's contract during the period of July 1, 2019 and June 30th, 2022. So I think we need to vote on that publicly at this meeting.
Could I ask a question? Is it possible to make a different motion, or am I totally out of line and have to go with this one?
You can make a motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a different motion, if I may.
We don't have a motion on the floor yet.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just
I'm
asking
sorry.
for one.
So I can make okay. Sorry, thank you for the clarification. I wanted to, for myself, because I've been on the school committee for 4 months, and this is my first superintendent contract experience. So I'd like to make a motion that we delay a vote tonight until the next meeting, just to give me some time to sit and take this in for that reason.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay. Motion does not carry. So,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent contract that we approved during our executive session, extending Dr. Carpenter's contract from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022.
I would second that.
Comment?
yeah,
We also need to approve the amendment to the current contract to accept the new paragraph.
That is a part of the motion we made in executive session that was as
So
presented.
it's all together now. Perfect.
okay, we have a motion and
Terry seconded.
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No.
Motion carries. Then, reporting out from executive session, reunion C.
So we had an executive session at our last school committee meeting, just where the committee voted to accept the agreement that we had reached with our cafeteria workers. The cliff notes on what that was, they had agreed to the same COLA increases over the next 3 years that the teachers and the Unit B, the instructional assistants and clerical staff had, which is 2% per year. There was a clause that was in the former contract that provided the lead cooks a $1 per hour. They were paid $1 per hour above their where they would fall on the salary grid. We priced it out and discussed with them to shift that from $1 an hour to actually have it just be a flat stipend for the year, so it would be a $2,000 stipend for the year for the lead cooks. There was a concern raised by the cafeteria workers in our negotiations, which I think was very valid. We have our lowest paid cafeteria workers do not make $15 an hour, and in Massachusetts, there's already legislation that over the next 5 years that the state would increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So part of this is to gradually drop the first step. So so drop a step each year, so that at no point will we have a cafeteria worker who's not making that $15 an hour threshold. And they agreed to the different insurance health insurance incentives that the other bargaining units had agreed to. And the last important thing is there was not a defined tool for evaluation for cafeteria workers, and we bargained with the group to come up with a good evaluation tool so that we can have a nice consistent tool to use for their annual evaluations.
You need to approve it in public session.
I think it was voted in executive, but you can, I guess, publicly vote it.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Unit C contract as approved in our prior executive session, the end of April, whatever date that was.
I would second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Subcommittees, reports, Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee.
Yeah, I'll do it. The Superintendent's Evaluation Subcommittee met and reviewed the latest updates with Dr. Carpenter, and we have put together the evaluation summative report, which all of the school committee members, I believe, have in your packet. And we have put together a timeline, which we were going to present tonight. The packets will be due to myself by May 23rd. In the evening of May 23rd, we will present our individual responses and ask that you come with a summarized response of each of your completed evaluations. And then, once those are surmised, they will be presented on our June 6th to present a consolidation, which reflects the overall evaluation by the committee for Dr. Carpenter and the goals that we had previously prepared. And we will vote on that on June 6th.
Okay.
Can I make a minor suggestion?
You can make any suggestion you'd like.
Really? Can I go home? It is-
Every minute counts.
I would suggest that we might want to have the evaluations due to you prior to the May 23rd meeting, so that after everyone gives their individual report, you would then present a summary, so that when we vote on June 6th, that's not the first time hearing the summary.
So the 6th is the second reading.
Right, so basically, we all give our final evaluation. This is your favorite part, I know, every year. So then, as a school committee, on the May 23rd meeting, we will hear what our school committee's final summation is, and therefore we know what we're gonna be voting on at the June 6th meeting. So if you
I
wanna
would-
pick a date.
So
then-
I would amend that to suggest that I receive the evaluations by Friday, May 17th, so that I can surmise them and present them on May 23rd, as long as as well as your individuals will be presented, and then we'll vote on that on the June 6th.
I think that gives us way too, we've always had at least 2 weeks to do these evaluations. It takes a lot of time to do that and a lot of thought. To try to
agree. It
do
takes-
that in a very short time like that, I think I don't know that it would be done as thoroughly.
I can't speak to anyone else's efficiency on getting the evaluation done. I clearly don't have a problem with the timeline, but I'm happy to hear other suggestions. We're also trying to have the evaluation completed in a timely manner. We're trying to stay on time. We're already behind. And we're also trying to incorporate our current chair in her evaluation process as well. A lot of balancing.
Sorry, I'm looking over at her because she was the one talking. I completely agree, Sharon, that it is a time-consuming and to be thorough and to use the evidence and to use the standards. And I think we owe it to Dr. Carpenter to get this done so that we could aim to vote at our June 6th meeting. I mean, that's a little bit over a week. I'm missing days, so.
I wouldn't mind, instead of the Friday, I wouldn't, because I'm the one who's putting it together, unless
Right.
someone else is stepping forward. Monday, the 20th, have them do
Does
for
that
Monday,
give
the
you
20th.
enough time?
That would be.
I will take one for the team if it makes Sharon
Well,
happy.
I think maybe if we can get it to you sooner.
Yeah,
we'll
if you can get it to me sooner, that'd be great, but deadline would be May 20th.
And that
And
way
then
you can.
I can surmise it and have it prepared.
Please note, Madam Chair, that the Vice Chair used Terry's calendar to,
Paper calendar, paper?
my paper calendar, and on that date, I had several doctor's appointments, so thank you. Pass that around.
Let's HIPAA right
Terry-
there. or it's
Terry's
just
is gonna be
Dr.
done by the 17th, he's very busy on that day. Is that better?
Much better.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy, for your suggestion.
So is the 20th.
So,
You
due
wanna
by the 20th or sooner would be appreciated. And,
Is that all right?
come with your summary prepared for the May 23rd meeting.
Okay.
Vote on the 6th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can send them electronically, or I'd be happy to take a paper copy.
Fax, can I fax it?
You can fax it, scan it, mail it.
I hear faxes are coming back.
Right?
Okay, superintendent's report, town meeting, 2019.
Heard it was a doozy.
What's there to say?
The paper covered it.
I think the good is the school department's budget passed by well over 50 votes. On some level, I'd like to thank Hugh Drummond and others that were passing out the piece of paper on just that costs are increasing. I get that, and I at least briefly pointed out that we've tried on our end to keep the school district budget. While I know it increases, we've been trying to keep that increase reasonable. And I think we have over the last several years. And I think I would like to thank those that supported the budget in the vote. We had a different challenge on the second night's town meeting when it came to the regional agreement issues. I look at it, I was like flogging myself is not my greatest moment in life. In hindsight, I think that, I need to have piles of paper things and not my computer before a town meeting. But I'm also just trying to be a realist in the tone of the room and what would we need to have people actually be able to see what we're talking about, and, you know, when it comes to the regional agreement, because I think just, I appreciate the question on, you know, sort of like, what are the changes? But you know, there's nowhere in the warrant that people can see what the change is proposed. There's a short paragraph that describes. It has a cursory overview, so I think either we would need to literally print up, you know, 800 red line copies that people can have in hand, because although it says in the warrant that it's available in the clerk's office, we'll get to that one in a minute, but although it says in the warrant that's available in the clerk's office, clearly nobody went to the clerk's office to ask to go see the warrant.
So can I know that both attorneys looked at the language that needed to go in the warrant, and I know this was a conversation last year, and I honestly was very surprised that the entire red line version wasn't in the warrant, because all of the other articles that, especially when town charter articles are brought up, the red line version is in there, and it says removing this paragraph.
Right.
And so I'm surprised that it wasn't.
So I think, you know, in hindsight, I think we either need to request that happens, and you know, and have that in it or available. You know, it's, you know, the whole piece with the town clerk. You know, afterwards, I'm reaching out to Leah saying, you know, could you check with Chatham's town clerk? Because if Harwich's town clerk doesn't have it, does Chatham's town clerk? And then also ask, has anybody come to ask to see it? And, you know, so I think Leah could briefly report out what if I, you know, I believe no, Chatham's town clerk didn't have it. Chatham's town clerk said nobody had come to see it, and when asked, you know, she just said, well, I'll just call the town manager's office. They should have sent it down to us. You know, so it's, you know, so I think it puts us in this weird predicament going into Monday's town meeting in Chatham. And you know, thinking about this, I would hate on some level to go and have folks in Chatham go approve something if, for whatever reason, over the next year, there's a want on the Harwich end to change some wording, and then we'd have to take it back to, you know, it would make more sense that, you know, that they both approve it 1 year. And, you know, does it impact us one way or the other? No, because the existing regional agreement, and the only thing that's changing is just some archaic wording about, you know, about the regionalization. And, you know, there was one clause in there that had a financial impact, I'd argue, for Harwich, a beneficial one, and that's that the way it had read, it really left debt service to you know, to be you know, following along that our enrollment breakdown. And as I mentioned at the town meeting, that means that if for whatever reason we need to replace a roof on Chatham Elementary School, it finds the Harwich taxpayer paying for a roof on a building that Chatham owns. And, you know, so we had talked going through this process that since the towns own the elementary schools, that the town should be responsible for that, not, you know, so that, you know, so it puts it in a situation where, you know, the town's responsible for their own debt of that might happen on an elementary school, not having it split between. So I think it's something that would be good to see amended, but I think it's a little awkward if it potentially passes in Chatham, but it doesn't in Harwich, and you wait a year.
Did
So-
the red line copy make it to Chatham? They have the original, the red, the green, and the fire.
As of today.
Well, they had it before, though, too.
Well, they had it before.
The town manager did. They've always had, we prepared everything they needed, because I know we were
For both,
really.
for both towns.
For both towns. So they had what they needed from us. Clear as a bell.
So I don't know if there's some consensus that, because I would argue that this group should give the town of Chatham some sort of signal as to what they should do on Monday. Is this, do you shelve it for a year?
I would say just shelve it for a year, because even if you do go through Chatham and, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Even if we did go through Chatham's on Monday, it's gonna have to wait until May next year. And again, like you said, there could be some thorn in somebody's side on Wednesday of May 6th of next year, that it has to, something's gonna get changed, and then they would have to go, then we wouldn't be able to get it into Chatham's because the warrant would already be closed. And so I would just say to postpone it again.
I would agree with that also.
It's only been twice, this is year 2.
We need to
The
vote
fortunate
that.
part is there is nothing of any major consequence.
No, there's really not.
There was no edit on our part to move it forward for the select boards in both towns vote. So if what occurred, the best corrective for it will be to somehow signal to Chatham that we'd like to shelve or postpone it for 1 year.
I will take on babysitting it for next year and follow it.
Get that, and
I'm
don't.
holding you to that one.
Second.
I will hold on to that one, because gosh darn it, this is the 3rd year that I've worked on it. I worked on it as vice chair with Brian, I worked it on as chair last year.
That's what I'm saying, it's 3
And
years.
this year, so it
Right.
still didn't happen. So next year,
The good thing is the roof is still intact.
Well,
that's
great.
good.
Good.
So just for I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Just say yes.
Just for clarification, so if I'm understanding, this happened last year too?
No, this was a different, totally different
okay.
story.
All right, okay.
And yes, we had an issue last year.
Okay.
It was supposed to be on the warrant last year.
Okay,
It made it to one and not the other.
okay.
Is
Yeah.
this something that we need to vote on to take off the warrant, or you just say that to them?
I would argue that the group should probably have a vote to direct a member of the Chatham contingent
Yes.
to talk to someone in Chatham
Yes.
to say, for example.
So I move that we,
Anyone in particular?
Go see Shauna.
I make a motion that we have one member from Chatham to address this, so it's taken off the warrant there.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Well, given that I'm still going now, and I promise that we will get out sooner than Harwich Town meeting ended on their second night.
Oh, dear Lord.
That was a long night.
Chatham will have 3 nights.
So I just wanted to do a little quick acknowledgement. The vast majority of the admin team went up to Lesley University this past week for a professional development that there was a speaker, Cornelius Minor, who is a gentleman of color, Liberian, who has, I think, done a lot of great thinking when it comes to how schools can support minority youth and just different students who are struggling. So his presentation and his book it's titled You've Got This, Equity, Access, and the Quest to Be Who Our Students Need Us to Be. But it was nice. It was a good working session where you would go hear him present, break out in groups, and we had a large enough group that we could start breaking out in a group and coming up with our own sort of immediate action plans. What do we want to do here to go improve things for our students? So more to come as that plays out, but it really dovetailed in nicely to where we want to head with the strategic plan. In terms of light reading, of course, I know Joe's going to go home and correct my English on my letter.
Poor Joe's getting a bad rap on
Last Friday, I had the pleasure of going to Barnstable High School to be with superintendents and some educators from across Cape Cod. We were lucky enough to have Senator Jason Lewis, who's the chairman of the Joint Committee on Education, come down from Beacon Hill along with Julian Sear, who helped put this together. And we also had Vinnie DiMacedo from Plymouth, Senator Vinnie DiMacedo come and join us as well to hear from, from us on the Cape, what aspects of the Chapter 70 formula aren't working. I think on some level, they were probably wishing I wasn't there because I probably spent a little too much time with the calculator and spreadsheet. But I provided to them verbally a sort of a rundown on where I think the formula isn't working, and I mean there are just, I'm a numbers guy. There are aspects of the formula that just don't make sense. It's a formula that goes back to ed reform, and part of the equation is that there's this assumption that every school district has 3.5% of their students are special ed. So when it tries to calculate incremental costs, it goes and takes your enrollment, multiplies it by 3.5, and says, okay, this amount of students are going to need special ed services, so they're going to need some additional money. And so when they come up with the foundation budget, well, if you go back to 1993 on the state website, 17% of the kids in 1993 were on ed plans, not 3.5%. Today, 18% of the kids are on ed plans, not 3.5%. So, if you're scratching your head on why is it underestimating the amount of funding that's needed for special education, well, that might be a place to start. And so I kind of walked through just the various numbers that go into it and where are they off and where are they off by how much, and including one of the things I was really sort of sharing is I think it's grossly off when it comes to ELL, and I think that's for us a number that we would need to see as a district, seeing where our ELL population is going and how fast it's tracking that way, that we would need to see the formula keeping up with those students. And so it's it's presuming, I think in what I wrote here is it's presuming that we would have ELL costs of $163,000 would be the incremental costs, when in our budget that's almost $500,000. So it's like, okay, we're off by threefold, and so I think they need feedback on concretely where does it need to change and by how much. I'm also a realist that at the end of the day, there's one pot of money at Beacon Hill, and if you go take from it and support education, maybe some of the the clientele that Tina works with outside of her school committee role might not have the same funding. One of the other areas that I also chose to speak on, and I said I know this isn't exactly what you want to hear, because they came down to kind of hear about the Chapter 70 formula, but at the end of the day, when it comes to regional school districts, you have a Chapter 70 formula, and then there's how you apply the Chapter 70 formula in a regional assessment. And there are aspects of that formula that I see as inherently flawed when it comes to certain regions. And I called up my colleague at Dennis Yarmouth, and I asked if it would be okay if I would speak for both of us when it came to that, because there is a challenge on how that formula, when applied, impacts our district, and we routinely see it each year in this sort of a slight financial favor towards Chatham, or in the case of Dennis Yarmouth, a slight financial favor towards Dennis, because the state, and I get why the state does this, it wants to look at every town and say, even if you have great wealth, to support the education. We want to, we want to go at least provide 17.5% of your foundation enrollment. That's the state's commitment to you as a town. Well, that works fine and dandy if you're stepping back and looking at it from a wide-angle lens of the state. But when you apply that in a two-party dance, and the state says, well, you could afford it, but you're held harmless, it means that somebody has to pick up the cost. But you're not looking at it from a statewide lens, you're looking at it from a narrowed down. And that was one of the things that shows up in this, sort of budgeting conversations that we've had over the year. When we say, okay, well, Chatham's minimum required contribution is reducing by, by this amount of money. It's all part of what was driving Chatham to have this sort of negative. And in the case of the union at Dennis and Yarmouth, while it was Chatham was held harmless for $156,000, Dennis was held harmless for $441,000 this past year, and it's and some of that is the enrollment shift is behind it, but I would just encourage them that there's at some point, I know they're trying to fix the formula, but when you fix the formula, and I think they sort of acknowledged that, it's sort of outside of what their focus is, but after you fix the formula, you need to fix how it's applied. So, as I said, I said I'd be happy to explain how I get to the numbers, or I'd welcome them to take away my calculator and spreadsheet.
Thank you for meeting with them. That was great, and thank you for bringing that onto their attention.
Yeah, so you have all the numbers, feel free, it makes really good reading. And then just one last thing, and I want to bring up something to the committee that Sharon has brought up before, and that is, as I'm sitting today at the Pilgrim Congregational, I was going back in my head to conversations that Sharon's had that, as Glenn Bryant was ailing, this want, that we should be having some sort of plaque or something to honor the commitment that school committee members have put in here. And I know that this committee has not wanted to spend taxpayer money on a plaque or something to acknowledge themselves, but I would like to personally go and fund some sort of thing. I have a vision of what it can be because I had one in my former district. It's not going to break my bank, but I think it's important to celebrate and acknowledge what Ed Jaworski provided to this committee, what Glenn Bryant provided to this committee, and what our outgoing chair has provided to this committee. And I think I would be remiss for to just kind of sit back for another 3 years and not see us have something that's hanging in this room that commemorates the work that volunteers provide to our two towns.
I'd just like to add one thing to that. Thank you so much. I don't know if you'll think this is funny or morbid, but when Ed died, that was our third person. Ann Haggerty, a young woman in, I think, her 30s from Chatham, died first on the school committee. So there's something about the school committee, I don't know, but anyway, there's been a lot of work done, and
maybe they shouldn't do that.
I think we're all going to resign right now.
yeah. So we're grateful for those three.
Possibly a perpetual care package. Cutting the lawn and allowing a potted plant.
Just want a hoodie. Just want a hoodie.
Just want a hoodie. All right. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we did that. We have the establishment of a Monomoy Media Film Club account. Do we need to take a vote on that?
I move to approve the establishment of the Monomoy Regional High School Media Film Club account as presented at our last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Copier lease, we went over that before.
I'll do that one. I move to approve the lease agreement, oh, I lost it, with Kenmark. Do I need the dollar amounts? For the 48-month lease of $3,653.05 and a service agreement for the total 48 months of $2,162.53.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Monomoy Regional High School Program of Studies for 3/28/19 presentation. I think we need a vote on that.
So moved.
Second.
You said it all, I didn't need to repeat it this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And approval of warrants.
Does that,
Is she here?
Warrants? We signed them?
Yeah.
They were presented for signature.
Oh, they were
So,
presented.
yeah, I had it written out what I was gonna say, but, it got, oh, yes.
I was wondering what that was.
The warrants have been presented for signature.
Yep.
Okay, case closed?
Need a motion?
I don't know.
No? Okay.
I'm not clear what this is about. I've never heard of approval of warrants.
So I have received some feedback from that listserv that goes around that it should be reflected that when warrants are presented for signature, it should be reflected not only on the agenda.
Our action,
but the
it's not a
minutes as
vote.
well.
Oh, every time, every meeting that we're
Every
signing?
time we
It should
sign
be
a warrant?
Something we have to do.
Oh, thank you
But it
for
wasn't.
So
letting
it's a
us
new
know.
general practice?
It is a new general practice. Because I get 472 emails a day from the listserv.
Wow, you're so lucky.
Great.
So, we don't need,
No.
okay.
No, we don't.
Well, on that note, I think we can adjourn.
No,
Oh,
Madam Chair,
oh,
this is your last meeting. Because she's choosing not to join us again because apparently she has better things to do on Thursday night. Yes, so I would like to take a moment to thank you for working with you over the 3 years. Last year and this year last year as my vice chair and this year as you as chair, and it's been very enjoyable in listening to your rants,
My
as you like to
random
call them.
thoughts.
And I have learned a lot on what things to focus on and trying to continue to push the district forward. So I want to thank you for your
Service.
no, I was going to say constant push in a way to just to make everybody better in the district. So
thank you. We'd like it on the Howard Finance Committee.
that would be fantastic.
You hit him with those smart goals, Donna.
Well, thank you. I did write out a few thoughts. I just wanted to say, I wanted to say that this school committee experience was unlike anything I was expecting.
Better, right?
Much better.
Okay, good.
Having spent my career in education, I learned a lot from serving on this school committee. And Dr. Carpenter has answered, addressed concerns I ranted with or came in with. But I also learned a lot about his commitment, not only to education, but to the kids. The children of Monomoy are his #1 concern, and any decisions made start and end with what is best for the Monomoy students. And I have been fortunate to see this firsthand. So I leave with mixed emotions, but watch out Howard Finance Committee.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Great job, Donna, thank you.
Can I add just a comment? Donna, I remember the first time I met you, you had come, I was serving on the school council for the high school, And if you can remember back there, and I was so impressed with the fact that you came and joined our council and went out and engaged in conversation and, talked to people before actually, getting elected. So I just wanted to recognize, because I know for myself, that's very important, that I'm out having conversations. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sorry to see you go.
Okay, and we'll see you around the campus.
Yes.
I move to adjourn.
Motion to Yeah, adjourn. second.
I was waiting for somebody else to jump in.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You need your gavel now.
Motion does carry.
One last time.
3 hours before. Thank you.